Good afternoon and welcome. We're so pleased to be here today and share with you all this wonderful information about the PMAY Artists Initiative. PMAY stands for the Philadelphia Music Alliance for Youth. And again, thank you for joining us. And I thought I would just start off going right down the line here, and each person can introduce himself. And I'm Helen Eaton, CEO of Settlement Music School.
I am Stanford Thompson, the founder and executive director of Play on Philly.
I'm Joseph Conyers, and I'm involved with 3 organizations with PMAY. I'm the assistant principal double bass of the Philadelphia Orchestra. I'm the music director for the All-City Orchestra of the School District of Philadelphia, and I'm the executive director of an organization called Project 440.
Hi, I'm Marquise Bradley. I'm a senior at the Philadelphia High School for the Creative and Performing Arts, and I am a PMAY artist.
I'm Najib Wong, and I'm the program manager for the PMAY Artists Initiative.
Terrific, thank you. I thought we would start off with a short video about the PMAY Artists Initiative.
So PMAY is a really incredible initiative here in Philadelphia in that we have a number of organizations working together to benefit many young musicians from underrepresented communities to find their way to be professional musicians on stages across America.
The program started in 2017, and it was funded generously by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. And the mission of the program is to provide high-level quality instructions to students from underrepresented communities. Less than 5% of American symphony orchestras are represented by Black and Latinx musicians. We hope that our initiative can make a significant impact on diversity in orchestras.
In the future, I hope to become a professional musician, hopefully in an orchestra setting. PMAY has helped me accomplish and drive me toward that goal because they have given me the tools needed to succeed. They have supported me with many different things. Summer camp, for example, at which I had mentoring, chamber music, orchestral rehearsals, private lessons every single day.
I think this program is very important for those students that don't always have the means to be able to go out and get private lessons with great teachers and mentors, and gives them a chance and an opportunity to achieve their goals.
I think PMAY really helps young students out in general because most kids, they don't really know, not only kids, but also the parents, don't really know much about classical music or how to even start as a musician.
As a parent, you had to provide financial needs in where you have to figure out how you are going to pay for all the extra activities that your child is involved in. With PMAY, it helps to ease the burden because it helps for different orchestras, also provides you with teachers, private teachers that Akili didn't have until the organization stepped in and was able to assist us with that.
One more great thing about this program is that most of our students will be part of multiple organizations. And each of our organizations has a student advocate who's there to take care of them when they're part of their programming. So if a student is in 5 different programs, there are 5 different caring adults who mentor them.
A lot of the administrators that I work with at PMAY are wonderful people. They care deeply about the students. There was a time this year where there was a student that really wanted to come and take private lessons but had trouble getting to the city. So the administrators worked together to make it possible for her to come and take public transportation and come to me on a weekly basis so that we could continue to work. Their care for these students was amazing. It was wonderful.
So at the PMAY Artists Initiative, we try to build a community of students and families who help mentor one another through this process.
So my favorite part of the PMAY initiative is this concept of family. I mean, it's become kind of commonplace that we always refer to the saying, it takes a village. And PMAY really does feel like that village.
It brings everyone together. It helps people who need a gateway to achieve what they want and really just make their dreams possible. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
So if you're a prospective student, if you're thinking about PMAY, is this right for me? Is this something I can do? I will say, if your love of music is great, and you have the passion, and you want music to be part of your life, you should definitely apply to be a part of this family.
I'm just going to give the briefest of backgrounds on PMAY, but before I do that, I want to remind you that you can go onto slido.com, and the password is SphinxConnect to send us questions throughout our presentation, and we really welcome many, many questions, so thank you for doing that. PMAY is a collaborative that's now 20 organizations that started in 2012 with the intent to share best practices. It's not a separate 501c3 by design. We've kept it really simple. We've done joint projects together, including a day-long celebration of youth and music. We've traveled across the country together, learning about best practices with other collective impact initiatives. We wrote a white paper setting out our goals, and currently we're working on shared professional development opportunities. Today, you just saw a video on the PMAY Artists Initiative, which is a subset of PMAY, 10 organizations who are all working together to support students from underrepresented communities who wish to become professional classical musicians. The slide that you see here represents the work of our 10 organizations and where we all fit in with the ecosystem of music education in Philadelphia. We've broken out the student pathway by level: early access, refinement, and mastery. And each color represents an organization. And so you can really get a very good idea of how rich, how robust the ecosystem is in Philadelphia. I'll turn it over to Stan.
So while Play on Philly primarily introduces classical music to students in Philadelphia, we realize in thinking about one of our students, Zebediah, who started with us in the 7th grade in our very first year, that by the time he graduated from high school, he had participated in all 10 groups that consist of the PMAY Artists Initiative organizations. And it was very difficult, although I would love to say that it was because Play on Philly found him in West Philadelphia and put a viola in his hand. He is an amazing person. The reality is that because we all collaborated and worked together, Zebediah is now finishing his junior year at Rowan University, where he studies music education. It was really clear that as leadership changed in Philadelphia of the organizations that you see listed in front of you, that we had a desire to say, why don't we move Zebediah from Play on Philly into the next level that will give him the challenges so that we can concentrate our resources on filling Zebediah's seat. And we watched students like Achille Farrell, who came through right after him and now is studying at the Royal College of Music in London.
I'll talk briefly about our theory of change, and basically is what I said in the video. It really is this concept of idea that it takes a village. Myself, I come from a small city, Savannah, Georgia, where I was kind of used to this ecosystem that was created among organizations to work, and that's what I definitely see in the PMAY project. As Stan said, there were some organizational and leadership changes that opened up an opportunity for real dialogue across organizations. I do have to say it takes a bit of trust on the part of everyone involved, because everyone's coming from a different set of everything. I mean, from fundraising to objectives to their own mission statements. So how can we all put our resources together to help our students? The thing I would say that keeps PMAY going is that we try to keep our students the center of our focus. Because if we can get students like Zebediah going through the program, we know we've created successes. And the last thing I want to say, there's constant dialogue between the organizations. And we have, within the network and a system of teacher advocates who talk about the students and report, and so we know what's going on between all our different organizations. I want to introduce you to one of our PMAY artists, who I'm proud to say is the principal clarinet of the All-City Orchestra that I conduct, and the winner of our concerto competition this year.
Hello. As a student in the PMAY Artists Initiative, I participate in 7 out of the 10 organizations, and I can say that before PMAY, there was never really a sense of cohesion between all of the ensembles and organizations I worked with, and with them coming into the city and creating this ecosystem, there was a network of support that I noticed and my friends in the organizations also notice. And we are very grateful for it.
So that's where I come in. Everything they said, I have put a intentionality behind it. So we've created systems to track student progress, to communicate, and just share information, and look at where all the efficiency lies. And if we had, for example, 4 organizations doing college readiness, and then why don't we just have one? And that's creating efficiency for all of us. So we just share our information.
So my colleagues did give a very brief presentation, which I had asked, so that's kind of amazing. And so we open up the floor to questions. Yes.
Catch.
My question is for the PMAY artists. Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Chloe, and my question is for the PMAY artist, Marquise. How have you grown musically as a PMAY artist, and did you expect to get that far with their help?
Thank you for the great question. So the amazing thing about the PMAY Artists Initiative is that it's a collection of organizations all with one goal of seeing their students succeed. So in that process, we meet the organizations at different places in our journey to success. For example, in Project 440, they teach us how to create goals and what it means to have a SMART goal. And we go into other organizations like the Philadelphia Youth Orchestra, where we act on the leadership skills that we've learned in organizations like Project 440, and so, yeah, furthermore.
Question.
Yes. Hi, thank you. My name is Molly. I'm from Baltimore. I work with Orc Kids. My question is about how you guys communicate, and I hear you guys talking a lot about trying to reduce overlap, and maybe in how your programs are run, and maybe how you can streamline each program to be its best and find the best services that it can provide. How did you communicate that with each other, or figure out how to avoid that overlap, or if there is overlap, how do you overcome that issue if it's an issue?
Do you want to answer that, Majid?
So thank you for the question. I think it grew organically in Philadelphia. Within our collective, we have an El Sistema program. We have 2 full orchestras. We have a chamber orchestra. We have a chamber music program. We have 2 community music program, the school district, and fellowship programs, 2 fellowship programs, plus Project 440, which doesn't teach music, but teach everything else, college readiness and entrepreneurship. So organizations have long communicated with each other and fill in gaps between programming. And recently we've been able to put all these together for this project and continue to refine. So it's just like Joe said, it's continuous dialogue between organizations. We meet pretty frequently. We text each other, we're on the phone, we're emailing, and we're just having coffee and having lunch. So Philadelphia is I would say it's like a big city with a small town mentality. And everybody knows each other. Everybody has worked at each other's organization. I've worked at Temple and Play on Philly. So I understand El Sistema, right? So it's a very interesting city.
So the city of brotherly love, is that right?
Maybe to piggyback on that, Stan, perhaps you could talk a little bit about how we're really straightforward with one another about what we do best.
Yeah, I mean, I will certainly say that I think 4 or 5 of these organizations are relatively new, meaning that they were established in like the past 10 years. And when I think of someone like Joe and I, who we both grew up in Georgia, both ended up at Curtis, and we're friends and we still have to like be friendly to one another. that we can have tough conversations and realize that we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. But certainly we'll say, I mean, like any other place, I mean, everybody has fought really hard to establish their organizations in a way, kind of carve out their turf. But we really, I mean, I think we were in a really heated conversation years ago, 6 years ago maybe, and literally it was just put out on the table, like, look at kids like Zebediah. You know, he is, again, successful because we all played an important part in his life. So we're continually going back to the students, what do they need first? And there's so many kids to serve, and even our private organizations, even the school district, I mean, we don't have enough resources to serve everyone. So there's always that need.
There's a question. Oh, go ahead. You have questions here? No, please come forward.
Hi, I'm Amy from the Richmond Symphony. Did I hear you correctly say that this is not a separate 501c3? So that being true, can you talk to us about the funding model?
So the way the PMAY Artists Initiative is working is that Settlement Music School is the lead partner. And we worked with all of our colleagues to put in this proposal to the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. There was intensive planning over a year and many, many discussions, many meetings. And as the lead partner, Najib Wong works for the PMAY Artists Initiative, and I also work with him on a daily basis at Settlement. And I think that the structure is working very well. There's a really high level of communication, which is absolutely key. And Settlement, as well as all of the institutions, are deeply invested in this success.
Hi, my name is Daphne. I'm a double bassist at the University of Maryland. Coming from an underrepresented community myself, I have had plans to create an organization for people like myself, but in instances where I do not have a deadline, my creative mindset does not come into play. So what would you suggest for people who want to create an organization when it comes to creating ideas, bringing them into fruition, and enhancing and creating a community out of that idea?
I'll say really quick, move to Philly. And come work with us. And rent is much cheaper than the DC area.
No, sure. I mean, I think one of the biggest things is kind of know your area and do your research. I think that's the most important thing. A lot of young people have a lot of ideas, which is really exciting. That gets me excited about the industry and the possibilities that exist. But what a lot of young people don't realize is a lot of other young people have similar ideas. So there's kind of, literally safety in numbers, where if you of other initiatives that could be doing something similar, maybe they're a partner. Because just to be real for a second, the nonprofit community is pretty intense because everyone's looking for funds and generally going after the same people. So you don't want to go to someone with the same idea. If your idea is unique enough, and this comes after a bit of time and research, if your idea is unique enough, then it's gathering your resources, figuring out how you're going to do your funding, putting together a budget, a board, 501c3 status, all kinds of fun things like that. But if I had to give it in a minute, that's why I would start, is do your research and know your community. Yeah.
I just want to add that Airbnb, they launched 3 times before it was successful.
I heard mentioned, so earlier I heard that like between like Joe and Stanford, you guys were friends, but then when it comes time to like talking about business, you can like put up a wall where like your friendship isn't affected no matter what happens in your like business conversation. So how do you get to that point to have like a friendship and a business relationship?
I think I mentioned it when I said the trust factor. I mean, we trust and respect for the other person. And in my work, in doing this work in communities and seeing things in Philadelphia and outside of Philadelphia, sometimes it's amazing how little we actually trust each other. Just putting it out there. Sometimes it's amazing how little we can rely on someone or rely on an organization to do what they say they're going to do. Now, I mean, granted, if they have fooled you once, you've learned your lesson. But we all have to play our role. And we all have to play our role in helping these young people. And the worst thing that I hate seeing is seeing adults get in the way of helping young people. And I feel like sometimes we are the biggest culprits for getting in the way. So if you can have that trust, if you can establish that trust and have those frank and sometimes difficult conversations, they're good because they help our young people.
And I'll just add to that. I mean, it's trust that our partners will do the right thing for the student and for their families. I trust that when I send a kid over to settlement for lessons, that Helen and her team will have that kid's back just like we did. And it took us some time to realize that we're not the only ones that also believe in our kids and their potential. So I think that once we got past all of that, it's great because we have the opportunity to see like what Marquise is doing and the progress that he can make that we've been able to help facilitate. So.
Can I add one last real quick thing? It's not always peaches and cream and rainbows and unicorns. Just want to say that. I mean, when you have tough conversations, you have tough conversations. But then our relationships and that trust can help us get through that. But I just want to make sure people aren't thinking that everything's, what is it, always sunny in Philadelphia? Yeah.
And I would also just like Najib to say a few words about kind of all the one-on-one conversations that happen with partners. So there are these group meetings, but Najib spends a lot of time talking with leadership and student advocates, so maybe address that a little bit.
I think Armando said it this morning that when he walks into the room to listen, to meet people, and he just listens, to understand. He doesn't listen to counter them or agree with them. He just, there's a certain level of empathy that we need to bring into the room and vulnerability that there's no right or wrong, but we have to take this next step together. And I think that's our core philosophy, is that whatever we are going to do, we're going to do it together. And there's strength in that solidarity.
Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Howard, and I'm a vocalist from Austin, Texas. I wanted to piggyback off of, was it Daphne's question? Right over there, I wanted to piggyback off of that one. I'm also in a similar situation where I want to begin a program for folks that look like me, to do music by folks that look like me. My question is, before we even get to the researching and the knowing your area and all of that great stuff, is there any kind of experience that you need to have to move forward besides curiosity, a will and a way, and a dream?
There's so many, I have a lot of thoughts going through my head, but well, it sounds like you already have the will, you have all that fun stuff. Get involved. And what I mean by that is know how the inner workings of an organization works by maybe either piggybacking off of some, just to see, because there are lots of, how can I say, nuts and bolts of running an organization that they don't teach us in conservatory. Speaking from experience. No offense, Curtis, but these are just life. I mean, my degree says I play the bass, and I do that at least half decently well. But it's being able to learn what those little systems are. Do you want to talk about that? I mean, or anyone who runs organizations?
Sure. I mean, Austin is rich in cultural, educational, musical, in our case, resources. I think about Austin Sound Waves, of course, everything that UT Austin is doing. There's plenty of community kind of music schools and a lot of people that support, if it's the symphony, and all sorts of youth orchestra programs, youth ensemble programs. So I think really understanding that landscape, again, I mean, this project that we're doing, we could not do alone. So even if I tried or Joe tried or Helen tried to make this happen by ourselves, it just wasn't, it just wasn't going to work. So sometimes, hitting your head against the wall, trying to get some type of support, because Play on Philly thinks that we can take kids all the way to Juilliard and Curtis by ourselves is kind of crazy. So perhaps, the ideas that you have can be aided by the help of others. So.
Can I just add that you talk about experience, and this group really took a leap of faith, appointing me as program manager, because the last thing I did was, I did a doctorate in trumpet and conducted the orchestra, and I think that we're doing something new. There's not a model for it really out there, and experience to me and to us is doing something and learning from it. If it doesn't work, do something else, right? So if we're trying to go into the future to change that landscape, we're not thinking about doing something over and over and over again, but we're trying to come up with new things that might be successful to cultivate our students and our collective. So take risks, I would say.
I'd also like to add something about working together. And one of the things that I've learned has really held true with PMAY from its inception is just start doing work together. Just roll up your sleeves. There's nothing like planning an event together where everyone is helping bring water for the kids and feed the kids and cleaning up after the kids. All those things really build trust and build a sense of community that we didn't just wait for funding to happen, we just said that we're gonna do it. That all of us worked and gave in-kind donations to make all of this happen, and we brought our staffs and our teachers, and we just started to make it happen. So I would highly recommend just like jumping in and just start doing.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something, if you last spring, my friends and I founded the Center City Chamber Orchestra. It's the only orchestra in the country that is administered and conducted and comprised of students, all ranging from grades 10 in high school to about junior year in college. I can say that the most difficult thing was trying to always have the best possible outcome, and I think that once we just realize that we'll never really be happy with every detail, we got a lot more work done.
Thank you.
Very briefly, I just want to say I wasn't trying to throw my alma mater under the bus, or any school. Many schools have entrepreneurial and great career studies program like the Curtis Institute of Music. I was just trying to say Curtis Institute of Music is not a business school, but a lot of these schools do provide resources and mentors to then take you to people who can help you learn those various skills. Just had to get that off my chest.
Hi, I'm Ara Guzalimian from the Juilliard School, and I second that too. I think we schools are learning as well. It's very inspiring to hear about the power of the collective and think about what can happen when multiple institutions work together to move beyond sort of institutional self-interest and to work collectively in the interest of the young musician. And so it would be really helpful to learn almost on an individual level how you talk about and manage the progression of a young artist from one of these organizations to another, how you think and talk about either the handoff, or it sounds like you actually embrace the overlap as well. And I mean, maybe we can begin with Marquise in terms of your progression among these organizations, and then you could tackle the more general philosophical question of how the organizations combine to work the progression in the best interest of each individual. But congratulations and thanks for your work.
Great. Marquise and Najib.
I can say that I was always encouraged to go to the next level. For example, when I was a student in the Community Music Scholars Program with Temple Music Prep, I reached a certain level where I was encouraged to audition for the Philadelphia Youth Orchestra or Philadelphia Symphonia ensembles. And it was challenging to get to that point. There was a lot of practice involved, but it did work out in the end. And I wouldn't have seen that for myself if I weren't encouraged by my teacher and different leaders in those organizations.
So when we look at a student's progression, I think we consider the whole student, right? The whole human being. And we consider what kind of environment that they would strive, what they need at that point in their, grades, 5 through 12. And also the people that they might be in contact with, right? So sometimes we think about a student needs certain skills. We also look at a student needs to build their own social capital, right? And so it's not to limit a student to 1 or 2 or 3 organizations is taking that away, because collectively among 10 organizations, we almost, we know a lot of people, right? And we know a lot of resources. We have a lot of resources, and we want to connect students to those things. So, and I think that's the power of the collective. And because we're in this project, we're able to add that intentionality. So our student advocates, we meet on a 2 to 3 week basis. And all we do is we discuss students, like, where's your student now? How are they doing? What do they need? How can my organization prepare them for our audition? And some other student advocates say, how can I get my students ready for your organizations, right? And we understand that each organization has certain strengths, and we want the students to be able to take advantage of that. I guess that's what I have to say about it.
Yes.
All right, I'm Armando Castellano with Quinteto Latino in San Francisco. And first, thanks for sharing this initiative and the way the collection is so amazing, how it works together and empowers each other. My question is twofold. When I visit programs around the country that are serving kids of color, and the difference is in access to philanthropy and money between ones that are white-run and ones that are run by people of color. And just asking you as individuals, you must have seen this in your collection, depending on their access to philanthropy, to money, and their ability to raise that money, and the cultural competency and the difference between those two organizations. I'm finding that the white-run runs have more access to more money and better trust more quickly than the ones run by people of color. And if you've run into that, and you see, a lot of people here, young folks wanting to start their own organizations, right? And we're of color in this room. What tools can they use to address that discrepancy? And if you're finding that discrepancy, if not, if you found that.
Okay. So I'll say it like this because, for example, Joe and I are in 2 different situations. Play on Philly is, we have a $2.6 million budget. We are in our 8th year. We had a $1.5 million surplus last year going into this one. There's money out there. We've been very fortunate. I think teams have worked really hard to get people to understand why what we do is important. Our co-founder, she also was, when we met, on the executive board of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and also used her power, essentially, to convince her friends and to take us seriously. She knew that would start by her really putting her foot down and making a big investment. I'll say it like this. I mean, she put down $300,000 so that we could get started. And I know that she's really proud of that small investment and what it has turned into in such a short period of time. So certainly it's a little tough, just how resources work in general. But I guess what I'm trying to highlight is that I heard last year and was reminded of this, that the civil rights movement was fought with white people and black people walking hand in hand. And I think that's really the biggest challenge of we need everybody to do this. And we spend a tremendous amount of energy trying to inspire and educate. Our kids work hard. And I think this is really for all of our organizations that are committed to this project. And it's one thing of, I would say everybody in this room, are you answering that call if you have that power and privilege to share it? And if you don't have it, or you going out and consistently asking for it in a way that really helps to draw people in and include them in that, and not necessarily exclude them because you might have a struggle, people of color might have certain struggles. And when we really look at it at the end of the day, I mean, even kids out in the suburbs of Philadelphia still don't have a great music education. Even the kids in the city, they don't as well. We're in the same boat, essentially. And those are things that we don't like to have dialogues about and see how we can really help each other. So that's my quick response to it is possible to do this. We even see reaching out to the Mellon Foundation and their work with us, how that power is shared in a way that we could leverage it not only to launch PMAY, but also to help our friends in Boston and Chicago who will launch their initiatives in the fall. That is another $6 million, I believe, that the Mellon Foundation has put up. And I believe with more success and more of these partnerships, we want to create the problem of convincing Mellon to really rethink the way they give money and how organizations can work with one another.
If there's time, okay, good. Yes, so in my instance, I'm a member of the Philadelphia Orchestra, so as far as finding resources, I mean, I totally own that. There are members of the community, just because they heard of the work that I was doing with Project 440, who came and asked how they could be of help and service. You bring up an amazing point about the discrepancy in funding between executive directors of color versus those who are not. And it's a big issue because in our work with Project 440, our session is next, so I'm not going to go all into it, but entrepreneurship is a big part of our work. And in that, the students learn about creating and connecting with community. Because the students have access to me, I basically feel the students have access to my network. And there are supporters who know about the organization who have reached out to some of our students and some of their projects and initiatives. So if we can start, and I say this as a challenge to a lot of larger organizations, instead of trying to, I would say, maybe hoarding everything to ourselves, but look for opportunities where we can actually provide a pathway for those in the community who might have fantastic ideas but don't have the resources to implement them. Listen to them and see if they can become part of your network.
That's great. Next question.
Hi, my name is Eric Williamson. I am from Brooklyn, New York, and I serve as Director of Outreach for the Brooklyn Youth Chorus. My question has to do with making connections with schools of music and higher education. How do you cultivate, or how do community organizations cultivate those relationships with schools of music and higher education?
Najib, do you want to start with that? Our hopes for how we're going to connect?
I think Stan can add to this, but I literally go out there and shake people's hand and give them my card, and then I'll send them an email, and then I start from there.
I was hoping he would talk longer than that, so I could think of something. Oh gosh. Okay, so there's, a slight advantage. I mean, Joe and I, for example, are both graduates of Curtis. We've realized that we all win when our organizations are supported. We also know how the institution works, so we can go and suggest ideas that we know they can easily do. So if Curtis is bringing in, Midori, for example, to give a master class, then I know how it works. It's how long is she in town? And can we find a time for her to come out to our school? Same thing with faculty and their hours. We know that the school budgets 35, I believe, well, when I was a student, every student received 35 lessons. On average, most teachers are only able to teach about 33 in an entire school year. So what do we do with the extra 2 hours? And if there's 5 trumpet players at Curtis, David Bilger has 10 extra hours. So knowing how that works, I can say, hey, can we take some of those hours that are already budgeted, and can we find a way to bring him out? So really, I think understanding how the school works, and then lastly, listening to what they need as well, because they actually need a meaningful partnership with us. And I think it's very easy to just go in and say, oh, I need this, and not realize that perhaps building a relationship over many years will pay off. Because we're seeing much more collaboration with places like Curtis to help out the PMAY initiative and them becoming more a central part of our success.
Thank you.
Perfect. Next question.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Steiner. I'm with the Lyric Society in Philadelphia, and I've had the privilege of working with all of you in Philly, and I want to commend you on the work you're doing, because I also have a few students that are in PMAY, and especially working with Najib, my students benefit so immensely from PMAY, and I see that working every day in their lives, with practicing, with performing, with everything they need to do on their path. So my question is in 2 parts. I'm curious to see from your perspective, you know, I have my own thoughts on this, of course, but what accounts for the rich landscape we have in Philadelphia of so many nonprofits serving music education? And then the next part is, what do you think our collective future looks like?
So I love this question because I work with the school district, and a lot of people may not realize that Philadelphia had one of the most extensive music education programs in the country. I don't know the exact number. I think there's as many as 10 students who played in the All-City Orchestra who are now members of the Philadelphia Orchestra. And the number of students who've gone from Philadelphia into the orchestra might easily be in the 30s range. It's a huge number. What happened is with a lot of particularly school districts of major metropolitan areas, there's all these reduction in funding. And I mean, to make a long story short, the staff of the school district was 34 full-time people. 34, 8 districts. This is in the school district of Philadelphia. And then by 2010, 2011, it was down to 1.5 people. Yeah. Half because the other person was part-time. Basically what happened, I mean, I've been back in Philadelphia for 9 years, but I think a lot of organizations, a lot of people wanted to help. And that's, I think, Stan said, there are many new organizations who are part of PMAY, but then some of the storied organizations that have been part of Philadelphia's history for a long time just wanted to help. And I think that's where the web began, or at least the parts of the web. And now what we're doing now, what we're trying to do at this moment is connect those points, bringing it back to the school district so the work is getting back to the students.
Hopefully we can continue to answer your question, but we have just 5 minutes. And so I'd like to just have some concluding thoughts, and again, kind of go down the line and share any remaining thoughts that you have. Stan, would you like to start? Najib, you want to start? Go for it.
I'd like to start by saying that through this initiative, there's a lot of excitement in Philadelphia. There's a lot of people and organizations who want to support our students who are not directly part of the collective. I mean, namely Curtis. We work with them with having our parents and Curtis parents interact, for example, and through their summer program, we have been able to get a lot of our students into Summerfest and Sphinx Performance Academy. Annie, I want to give a shout out to Annie if she's here. Right there.
She waives our fees. I think the password is please Annie. So I think it's still. But you know, this work is there's a lot of risk, I guess, in this work, and but I wanted to challenge you and provide a question. You know, but is it riskier to do this work, or is it riskier not to do this work? Right, and what does that mean for our cities? And I just want to give a shout out to the Mellon Foundation and Susan for allowing us to do this work that's so out of the box, that has no precedent whatsoever. And we're taking one step at a time.
So for those of you who are going on to create your own organizations like PMAY or very different organizations that serve students, I think that the one thing you should consider that we haven't talked about is what the students feel and how they want to go through this pathway and what it should look like. I think that as a student in PMAY, I have had my voice heard about what I want my pathway to look like, and I see it manifesting itself in younger students.
I'm going to borrow a slogan from a very popular individual, and that is, "We are literally stronger together." If I were to just take PMAY and wrap it all up, that is what it is. And when I started my job at the Philadelphia Orchestra, I was super excited and jumped in, like just ready to take on the world. Then the reality hit in, and it's like, wow, there are lots of different silos and systems and red tape, and as I said earlier, at the end of the day, all it was doing was preventing the work that needed to get to the students from getting to the students that need it the most. So I'll reiterate something that I said again. In thinking about these collectives and thinking about starting something like a PMAY in your community, or just even the conversation, just remember who we're trying to serve. And do not let the differences stop the progress of the work, because it's only the kids that suffer.
Just a show of hands, if you were offered a job in like your dream orchestra, Boston Symphony, as a principal player, you make $300,000 a year, just show of hands, who would take that job and do it? No, seriously. Can we, please, can you like put your hands up? Like, okay. Do y'all remember that feeling of like, we're all highly trained musicians. You remember that feeling of like listening to this stuff and going to concerts and being excited and dreaming of like, ooh, what it would be like to be on that stage and watch your heroes, people that you looked up to, people that were mentoring you in life and in music and all this other stuff. Do y'all remember that feeling? You know, Marquise and his friends, I mean, all the kids we serve, they have the same thoughts. We might be slightly jaded because, oh, the conservatories did this thing to us, or maybe we didn't get that job, or whatever it is. But don't forget that these kids are dreaming of the same things. And despite our experience, like, let them dream about being in these orchestras. And to be completely candid, I mean, if a white kid came up or an Asian kid came up and said, oh, I want to be in an orchestra, you know, would we stop them? Or would we put something, or say, oh, no, maybe don't do it, or it could be scary, you could get burned. So I just want to remind you all that the kids have these dreams, and we can play a really important role, and let's do everything that we can and let them have their own experiences, because they just might end up running an amazing organization like you all do, and helping others to try to get there. And it will take the next couple of decades, but I think if we all commit to that, then we can really see the type of change that we're all seeking.
As you think about this collective work in your own neighborhoods and in your cities, be ambitious, be courageous, and above all, be of service. And as we've all said today, put the students first always, and then you will do your best work. It's a privilege to be on this stage with all of you today. It's a privilege to work for the PMAY Artists Initiative, and I really thank you for being here today.